Hey, folks, good evening, and thanks for joining me on Phantoms Monsters Radio. I welcome all new listeners and members to the channel, as well as first timers in the chat. Now, this episode is going to contain a few of the more bizarre and unexplained and somewhat creepy reports that I've received since the previous weirdest of the weird episodes. Every so often, I'll set aside some exceptional accounts, which I will then present to the listeners. So, again, please feel free to comment on the accounts and let me know your opinions. So that being said, and we're still getting things ironed out on the channel. But that being said, let's go ahead and let's get started.
We live in a reality of phantoms and monsters. They exist among us, and sometimes they win. Even the devil was an angel once. The world has its own rules, and these rules are not human. Some of us seek answers to the origin and existence of cryptids and the unexplained. Join us as we venture beyond the known and accepted boundaries. Welcome to our nightmare. I think you're going to like it.
So, before I go any further, I want to mention that this channel is made possible by you clicking on the subscribe and like buttons and by you sharing our programming. If you're watching us on YouTube, the chat and super thanks donations are truly appreciated. You can click the dollar icon located below the chat box. The Buy Me a Coffee link and other donation links are also shown in the description. Thanks for your consideration, and your comments are always welcome. Tell me which accounts you find interesting in the presentation or suggestions for upcoming shows. I want to thank our chat moderators, Bernadette, Marla, Thomas, and Mike, and for their commitment to me and the channel, as well as Christina and Kevin at the ESP Network. Now, if you're in the chat and have questions, please use all caps, and I'll try to get to each one after the presentation. Now, I received the following account, and the witness stated, "Hi, I had an experience in Susquehanna, Pennsylvania. We were driving along the Susquehanna River on Route 92, right outside of Oakland Borough. My friend Katie and I were 17 years old and heading home from a friend's around midnight. This grayish pale humanoid looking creature came running up through the woods near the river and crossed in front of our car. It was running hunched over on all fours. We clipped it with the front passenger bumper, but it kept moving up the steep hill into the woods. Nothing but woods for miles up that hill. We both screamed. She said, 'What was that?' I just sat there in horror and then told her that we had just had to go back and look. We were so confused. It's remote in that area and no one ever walks on that road because it's dangerous. We turned the car around to go back. Nothing was there. We were shocked and confused. We went home and never spoke of it again. Now, she moved away to college shortly after, and we didn't really keep in contact too much. But I'll never forget that night. I didn't tell anyone until just about 2 years ago. Now, years later, the internet gave me the ability to investigate what I could have possibly seen. A crawler is what I saw. It was terrifying. This earth has things that just don't make sense. Now, we are not the apex predators. Northeastern Pennsylvania is a weird place. I have seen things that just don't make sense. But this was a moment I'll never forget. I don't go to the woods alone ever. I always have a dog with me. They sense things that we don't. When my dog is anxious, I leave. I don't ever need to see anything like that again. I know it's real already. Now, his next account, the witness states, "Hi, Lon. In 2019, I was at a Hilton hotel in Goose Creek, South Carolina, where I had been working in the data center world. In years up to that point, I battled with addiction and was having a hard time removing myself from that world. No matter how much money I made or how successful I became, for whatever reason, I kept going back even after being cleaned up for extended periods. The recurrence began to severely impact my career and overall credibility. So one night, after watching a documentary based on many gods over the century, I memorized their names, prayed to all of them to release me from this burden so I could chase my dreams and be successful, and went to bed, or so I thought. Shortly after going to bed, I was awakened by a large brown mantis like being to the right of the bed who was as tall as the ceiling in the room and standing in what looked like a portal or opening in the Hilton Hotel room wall. I was paralyzed and unable to move anything but my eyes. Otherwise, I would have surveyed more of how the being was in the solid wall or what was beneath it. I was raised out of bed horizontally, almost like I was laying on a board, and maintained about a 3 or 4 foot distance off the bed. I became terrified and looked at the being's eyes, which is when it immediately calmed me and let me know it was helping me. I remember looking around the room and not understanding why I couldn't move. How the heck was I floating above the bed, and what, if anything, was below me? The experience lasted for what seemed like 3 to 5 minutes, and I was returned to my bed. And when I woke up, I could move. The being was gone, and the wall was as structurally sound as it was before. What I can say for sure is that I no longer have an addiction or cravings. Whatever that was, it cured me and allowed me to become successful in life. I often pray for this being to return so I can somehow thank it for changing my life. I also had terrible nightmares that kept me up all night, every night before this incident, and now I rarely have dreams and sleep peacefully. I equate the experience or help to flipping a switch in my life that fixed many problems instantly. I would love to say this was just a dream and dismiss it from real being, but my overall life was impacted and it changed so dramatically that I can't. Reading others' stories about mantids had now reassured me that this incident happened and others also experienced it as well. I would be very interested to know if you know of any way to summon these beings respectfully. Well, look, I advise the experiencer that these beings, especially insectoids, usually have an agenda that just doesn't favor humans and any other species they encounter. I have offered to work with the experiencer in the future if they do want my help, but we'll see what happens. Now, this next incident, and it's interesting. I had brought this up with Rissa Miller when she was on with me the last time, and we were talking about Ilchester and the Hell House and the area around there, and some of the weird things that have happened there, things I've experienced as well. But anyway, I was thumbing through old investigation files when I came across notions that I had made regarding an unknown bird-like creature. Now, the sightings were reported in 1985 and continued into 1987. It was an odd situation because I knew a few of the witnesses and I was also employed nearby at the time of the sightings. Now, during the afternoon of May 5th, 1985, I received a telephone call from Alfred M., the initial witness. He and two other men had seen a large bird like creature perched in a hickory tree while driving south on Thistle Road towards River Road, adjacent to the Patapsco State Park in southwest Baltimore County, Maryland. Now, Alfred stopped the vehicle and watched the creature for several minutes. It eventually flew out of the tree and landed approximately 50 feet from the road, where the witnesses were able to get a keen observation of the creature. Albert stated that it stood 4 to 5 feet high and was greenish blue in color except for the head, which was bright red. The wingspan was enormous. He estimated it at 15 feet or more tip to tip. The legs were thick and long with distinguishable talons. The eyes were also noticeable, slanted and large with bright yellow hue. It also made clucking and cackle sounds. Now, after a minute or so, it unfurled its wings and took flight towards the east. Alfred said it reminded him of a hybrid dragon and peacock, which he thought was crazy, but he stuck with the description. Now, at the time, I thought that the creature was either a large turkey buzzard or maybe a peacock someone had as a pet. In fact, a peacock farm did exist in the area back in the 1950s, according to people I'd interviewed. I went to the location but found no evidence supporting the sighting. So later that year, I heard a rumor of a large bird being seen near the Hilton area of Patapsco State Park on the Hilltop Road. Now, after several inquiries, I was able to locate the witness, Darlene, who confirmed the sighting. She and her daughter lived nearby and had been walking along Hilltop Road when they observed a huge bird flying towards them. Darlene stated that the creature got within 20 feet of them, then suddenly changed direction and flew into the woods. She said that they were terrified. She was sure it was going to hit them. She had gone to the library to see if she could find a picture of the creature. She found an old illustration of a feng huang, or a Chinese phoenix, and said it looked very similar to what they had observed. She described the head as vibrant red with fierce eyes. The wings were bright red tipped with large green feathers. It flew by so quickly that she was unable to get a better description. Now, once again, I was stumped by the sighting. I talked to two ornithologists who thought I was delusional. I also contacted the State Park Service and asked if they had heard of any strange reports. Nothing, though, but they were amused by the question. So, on the morning of April 29th, 1986, several employees at the local paper mill where I worked observed a large bird standing in the loading area. Now, according to the witnesses, this creature fit the description of a very large peacock, but there were some other oddities. The head was bright red in color, and it didn't have long plumes. Other than those anomalies, the overall description pointed towards the peacock. Could there be a breeding population in the state park? Well, later on in January 1987, a truck driver, Robert, was heading south on Thistle Road and was startled by a huge bird that flew across the road in front of his vehicle. I was able to interview him by telephone a few days later. He lived in Edison, New Jersey. His impression was that it looked like a dragon. There was snow on the ground. The creature silhouetted well enough to get a quick but detailed look. Robert stated that it was as long as his truck was wide. He was driving an 18-wheeler and was powerfully built. He also confirmed that it had a red-colored head and greenish-blue body and wings. Now, at this point, I had nothing more than anecdotal evidence. There was no natural explanation for the existence of this creature. Now, even today, I have little to go on because I simply have not come across other cryptid that matches the description. Now, the final sighting, as far as I know, took place on June 30th, 1987. The witness, David, was a Baltimore Gas and Electric employee who, along with his partner, was working along the power lines that run north to south through the state park. At a point north of Hilltop Road near the old Mill Village is an abandoned church graveyard. Now, the former church was razed in the 1930s, but the graveyard was left on its own, thus it was severely overgrown in the woods. Now, David observed a large bird-like creature that he described as a griffin. Though he admits that he didn't get a very good look at it, He only noticed the creature after hearing a rustling sound, which he thought was probably deer moving through the woods. He said the creature raised up from a rock, spread its wing, and vanished. David admitted that the sight of the beast was a shock and that he did not want to go back to the location. Now, I really wish I had more to offer. Now, I kept the notes and vowed to go back and investigate the encounters if more sightings were reported. The witness Darlene may have been onto something. Maybe it was a mythical firebird or something with the ability to reborn from its own ashes. I hadn't heard of any other incidents until there may have been a more recent sighting by my colleague Rissa Miller. Now, you all remember her from being on with me. And when she was on, I had mentioned to her that about this so-called phoenix or this red-headed bird. Now, when she heard this, I I could tell she was kind of taken aback by it. But after we had gotten off the air, she told me that she saw something very similar to that when she was in the area. So maybe some more information will come to light, and if it does, I will add an update. So I'm supposed to go back down there at some point. I know Riss and I are going to get together and do some investigations in the area. So maybe I can come across some other witnesses who have seen something very similar to this bird. Now, in a recent poll question, I had asked the readers and listeners what their thoughts and beliefs were about guardian angels. And one of the responses was included. When I was about 12, I ran out into the road behind my mom's car. She had just dropped me off at my grandmother's, but I wanted to go see my buddy Arnold at his house. I tripped across the road and fell into the oncoming lane. No sooner had I looked and seen there was a pickup truck coming at me about 30 feet away than I had, excuse me, a pickup truck coming at me about 30 feet away. Then I was picked up under my armpits, turned away, and slowly brought floating across the road until my feet gently touched the pebbles on the side of the road. Now, while it happened, I just looked at the road moving under my feet. I wasn't scared, and I didn't think again about the truck, but I was so focused on the ground that after I was put down, I just kept looking down. I heard and thought nothing. Just, what was that? What snapped me out of the basic deep focus potential shock of it all was the truck whizzing by. And as soon as it went by, it snapped me out of it. I looked up at the red pickup going by and noticed the back of the driver and that he had a black baseball cap on. It's like he never saw me or anything that happened. He didn't stop or look, he just kept going. I remember looking up into the trees, thinking something must have been above me, but there was nothing. I ran to my friend quickly to tell him and his mom. I don't remember the response. It felt like soft pillows under my arms. Starting that day, I talked to God every day until I was older. How's your day? Hope you're well, etc. He never spoke back, but I thanked him like he was there for years. So was it a guardian angel? Who knows? So this next account, this is a fairly strange one, but it's honestly the location. I have heard other strange things coming from this area, but listen to it and let me know what you think. The witness states, I found a standing doorway in the brush once. It was on a mountain trail near my campus, Tortugas Mountain near New Mexico State University. And while I'd walked that trail probably a dozen times before this point, I'd never seen it before. Something to note about this trail. There are some old ruins nearby, so fragments of buildings, usually doorways or parts of stairs, were not uncommon. But this doorway was different. For a start, it was just a door frame and a door, no attaching wall ruins. As well as this, the door seemed very modern. It was painted light green, and the door handle was metal with a handle. It looked like an ordinary modern house door. Grass had grown up around the bottom, implying that it had been there for a while. Like I said, I'd never seen it before, despite having walked the trail a few times. I couldn't have missed it either. It was right on the narrow trail, completely across the track, walked into the grass. There was plenty of room to walk up onto the verge and go around it, but I was curious and it was slightly ajar, so I opened it fully, having to drag it through the grass and dirt that had built up around the base, and stepped through it. Immediately, something felt off. The best way to describe it is like a strong deja vu. Everything took on a weird dreamlike atmosphere, and I felt slightly outside of my own body. The trail looked the same ahead of me, but it flickered like a heat haze, and the colors were very saturated. The strange dream feeling faded slightly, and I was overcome with a sudden dread. I darted back through the door again. Immediately, everything felt normal. I looked through the door from where I was now standing, and the trail also looked normal. I closed the door and walked around it, and nothing strange happened for the rest of the walk. I went back up the trail several more times, but never saw the door again. A lot of freaky things are reported on that mountain. So, this next witness stated in this report, "Hello, Lon. I recently came across your site. Now, I rarely tell this story because of what others may believe about me and because it truly scares me. In fact, it scares me more than anything else in my life. More than my rational fears, more than any real risk. This is the most terrifying experience that I've ever had. It was 2008. I was recently married, and my wife and I had driven to Las Vegas from Flagstaff, Arizona for dinner. After an evening there, we were driving back because we had no money for a hotel. I hadn't been drinking. I was of a stable mind. It was late and I was a bit tired, but I was young and I had some coffee. It was after midnight, slightly snowing. My wife was asleep next to me as I drove, and I was listening to some AM country music. I like drives like that. I just relax and think. I don't believe in the supernatural. Even when I was a Christian, I was never very into the ethereal world of angels or demons or ghosts. I never felt very spiritual. But as I drove along on this empty road, I thought I heard my wife say something. I looked at her and she was asleep, but I looked through her window and saw someone or something running next to the car. He was about the height of the truck, maybe a little taller. He ran at full speed. He had long dark hair and piercing eyes and a nose like a muzzle, but to a point like a coyote. He had a beaded shirt with beads that made a shallow V across his chest. His arms were scrawny and his face sunken and hairy. As he ran, he turned to me and bared his teeth. I immediately lost all breath from my lungs and was frozen. I gripped the wheel to control the vehicle, turned away from him, and looked back. Now, he was losing lateral distance from the vehicle, but keeping pace. I turned back to the road and hit the gas. I looked over again and he was gone. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw nothing in the road, nothing ahead. I sat frozen, holding the wheel and speeding down the road. I hadn't made a noise. My wife hadn't woken up. I didn't say anything, and I didn't stop the rest of the way either. Now, when we got to Flagstaff, I woke my wife and we went to bed, but could not sleep. Even as I write this, I have a terrible feeling of dread. I've spent tons of time in the desert, in the forest, camping and hiking. I feel fine at night in a cemetery. I have seen flying objects and assumed the logical reason for all of them, but I have no explanation for what happened that night. I saw that. It happened. Maybe I fell asleep. Maybe it was a dream, but I don't personally believe that. That thing was there. So years later, I recounted this story to someone who lives in the area who is Navajo. They told me that what I saw was a skinwalker, and it made sense. Right now, I'm afraid a grown man can be drawn close to tears for this. I don't believe in gods. I don't believe in angels or ghosts, but I believe in skinwalkers. Now, in this next account, a large white creature transitioned from a quadrupedal stance to a bipedal gait, and it also displayed a long snout, long claws, and apparent absence of a tail. So, this information was forwarded to me, and here's a summary and breakdown of their recent encounter. And this is how it was sent to me. In Toma, Wisconsin, within a residential area on Farmer Avenue, a witness reported an unusual encounter in early morning. And this is recent. While walking his child to the bus stop, the witness observed a large white creature initially mistaken for a huge rabbit due to the posture on all fours, with its hindquarters noticeably higher than its head. The creature moved quickly across the road in just a few bounds. Upon reaching the other side, the creature stood upright on two legs and proceeded to walk bipedally, exhibiting a gait described as like a human sneaking. The witness reportedly estimated the height of the creature to be 6 to 7 feet tall. It was at least as tall as me, if not a little taller, and I'm over 6 foot myself. The transition from the quadrupedal stance to a bipedal sneaking gait appeared to be this creature's limited range of motion. The creature also displayed a long snout, long claws, and apparent absence of a tail. Now, the witness's initial confusion and unique transition to bipedal movement and other physical characteristics led them to consider the possibility of a dogman encounter. The fact that the sighting occurred within a residential area adds an interesting dimension to the report. Now, here's a breakdown that the investigator who sent this, and this was also posted on Facebook on I think it was either a Dogman website, but it was something to do with Wisconsin as well. Now, the bipedalism, the creature standing and walking on two legs, is a defining characteristic of Dogman reports. This is perhaps the strongest piece of evidence suggesting a possible Dogman encounter. The long snout. This is another frequently reported feature of Dogman. The size. An initial misidentification as a very large rabbit suggests a creature of substantial size consistent with Dogman description. Lack of tail. The absence of the tail is also a characteristic sometimes noted in Dogman sightings. The unique gait and movement. The rapid transition from a quadrupedal to a bipedal movement combined with the sneaking gait is unusual and could suggest a creature adapted for both types of locomotion, potentially for hunting or stealth. The location, it was Wisconsin. It's an area that's best known and well known for dogman activity, particularly in the Beast of Bray Road sightings. Now, Toma, Wisconsin is north of the area around Bray Road. So, we have had these cryptid canine sightings throughout the state of Wisconsin. Now, while the white fur is less common in typical dogman descriptions, it doesn't entirely rule out the possibility. Color variations are sometimes reported, and albinism is also a possibility in nature. The combination of the other characteristics, especially the bipedalism and the long snout, combined with the location, makes the possibility of dogman encounter a reasonable consideration. And I do have it was the Dogman Encrypted Eyewitness Support and Information Discussion Group on Facebook. Now I had put out, in fact, I had contacted Tobias Whalen about this if he had heard anything. And, I've got other people looking for other sightings of this creature. So if I do get anything, I will update it. Now, this next report goes as follows. I don't know what I saw. What I'm about to tell you happened, and I'm still freaked out about it 30 years later. Every Friday, a group of us teens would get together to play board games at Faye's house. Now, I'm changing the names of my friends. Faye lived with her parents and her older brother, who was never home. None of us were present in playing Pictionary. We were having fun when Faye's dad came storming in. He was typically the coolest guy I knew, kind and soft spoken with a heart like no one else. The last 2 months, he'd been changing, though. His whole demeanor towards us, his friends, his kids, his work, all had become a source of anger for him. I hadn't heard the whole story yet, so I was simply trying to avoid him as much as I could and still have fun at this house. Now, Faye's dad was super upset about the noise we were making and told us to quiet down. His wife was playing the game with us, and when she spoke back to him about his unreasonable approach, he slapped her in front of all of us. She fell on the floor, and we were all dumbstruck. Faye's dad was not a hitter. I'd been to their house so often, mostly to hang with Faye, and I never witnessed any domestic violence or any single bruise from someone being slapped or hit. Faye's dad turned to Faye's best girlfriend, and when he spun to face her, we all saw it. It was deep blue, like water at night. It was rounded like a tick body, and I'd estimate 12 inches across, a foot high, and attached to his back like a leech. I can't describe its body more than that. It was attached to his back along his spine, over his shirt, and directly between his shoulder blades. Faye reached out her hand. She was standing by him now and asked her dad what was on his back. Despite all the noise happening from his tirade, he stopped. He stood up and looked at her, and she walked towards him. In retelling this story, she said she was trying to touch it. This thing, whatever it was, detached from his back, and I swear it just floated for a moment. Faye's dad was dumbfounded. He stood like he was comatose. Faye put her hand out towards it again, and her mom grabbed her. We all stared at it for a second, watching this watery tick like body floating in the middle of the living room. It was only a few seconds, to be clear. We've all talked about what happened next, and it's still the scariest thing I've ever experienced, but I'll try and describe it the best I can. That deep blue spot did make a sound. It seemed to rob the room of sound, meaning it quiet, but quiet with white noise, if that makes any sense. It got smaller and further away at the same time without moving from where it was. Does that make sense? It diminished. There was no popping sound or anything when it left, but the air felt less heavy. Faye's dad collapsed. 2 days later, Faye's dad got a blood clot on his brain and died. Faye, to this day, thinks it was some sort of supernatural force. Now, Faye had a severe medical problem that had self corrected some months back. When they were cleaning out her dad's stuff, they found a bunch of crazy stuff dealing with the occult. She wouldn't go into much detail about it, but they threw it all away, burned all they found. She thinks her dad traded his soul for her health. I don't know what happened, but after seeing that, I'm open to many interpretations of what it could have been. I really hope it wasn't what Faye seems to think it was. Her dad was too cool of a guy to go like that or the way he did so suddenly. So maybe he did. I don't know. I never heard of anyone other than our circle seeing anything like this before. And part of me really hopes it just was our imagination playing an event that people see, like a weather balloon, or convincing others it was just an alien spaceship, but can't unsee that thing. It was there, and then it was gone, and my friend's dad died 2 days later. While I was typing this out on my phone, my friend Faye's mom just hit me up on Messenger. I haven't spoken with her in at least 10 years. Okay, I'm going to send this to you before I lose my nerve. That's that's a freaky story. I don't even know what to say about it, to be honest with you. Now, this next account, the witness states, "Hi, it's been 20 years since we've seen this, but it has always been on the back of my mind, and I'm sending this emails in hope of finding out any information that can help explain it. My mother was driving me and my three siblings to school. As we just turned off our block, I realized she was slowing down the vehicle. To our left is an empty lot where we then see something that looks to be a bird. It was gray in color and about 4 or 5 foot tall. As we stopped in the road, this thing looked at us. Its face was long and looked very old and wrinkled. It was also wearing clothes like a human. It turned away while opening its wings. They were about as wide as the front of our truck, which was 8 to 10 foot. It then sort of flew a few yards to our right, passing in front of us. The odd thing is that it seemed to be flying. The odd thing is that as it seemed to be flying, it never really flapped its wings. Just as soon as it crossed the road, we drove off." Now, after requesting more information from this witness, this is what I received. "Hi again. This was September in 2004, a small town called Levelland, Texas. It was early morning between 7:30 and 7:45 a.m. and I remember asking my mom, 'Are you seeing this?' She answered yes, and then my little brother and sister in the back asked, 'What is that?' What we saw was something completely out of the ordinary. So what did they see? I don't know. It kind of sounds a lot with something flying without using its wings. It sounded like what we're experiencing in Chicago. I mean, but as far as the description goes, it's nothing really like that. So, was this another type of supernatural humanoid or supernatural winged being? I don't know. So, if you've got questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and Christine will bring them up for me to ponder with you. My sinuses are acting up tonight. Let's see what we got. Any questions, folks? I guess not. I'm looking through it, and I know Christine hadn't put anything up yet. I'll give you another minute or so. Hey, look, if there's anything, if you have any accounts that you want to be read on the show, send them to me, and I'll consider it. As well, let me know any of the stories that you find very interesting, and what type of accounts that you'd like to for me to dig out and read, and I'll try to do that. Oh, here we go. Jose Sanchez. These mantis, ETs, and even men in black have been known to go through walls. Yes, they have, and I have received many accounts like that. Um, are they interdimensional beings? What are they? We don't know. Any more like the tick thing on the dad's back. I wish I did. That's an unusual one. I don't know what they encountered. Honestly, if I had to make a comment on it, I would say it was most likely what they thought or Faye thought it was. Um, Maybe it was some type of occult, something that he had maybe traded his soul for, his life for, to save his daughter. I think in some circumstances, most circumstances, any parent would do anything if they thought it would help a child live, but who knows? Sir Wolf, do you have any accounts of winged beings saving people? Saving, yeah, I do, and I will have to dig those up, but I'll see what I can do. Jose Sanchez, are they deatomizing as they do in Star Trek when beaming up? I don't know. I I can't even answer that one. In fact, quite frankly, I don't think I've ever had an account where someone deatomized. So, dagnabbit, have you heard about an electrified fence that runs forever deep in the woods in the Smoky Mountains? Nope, I've never heard that one before. If you do have any examples, feel free to send them to me. That's yeah, I haven't heard of that one. Christina, any reports come up about fairies? I do get fairy reports. I do occasionally get other little being reports, and I have talked about those in the past, and I have made some videos about that. What I'll do is, if I get some new ones, I will put them together and try to make a presentation with them. Okay, folks. Well, again, I want to thank you all for coming in here and watching and chatting. And if you donate, it's truly appreciated. Your support's what makes all of this possible. Please like, subscribe, and share. And if you have a sighting or encounter report that you would like to be considered for the report or for the personal report show or on Phantoms Monsters, please forward to me at Lon Strickler at phantomsmonsters.com. Cans Quatch did put one up real quick here. Any weird ones where people summon entities like the tick thing or summon something totally unexpected? Yeah, we will. I will occasionally get something where something has been apparently summoned. I don't get a lot of them, but I do occasionally get some. I'll go back, make a note of that, and see what comes up. Jose Sanchez. It sounds like maybe the Dogman comes a variation of short-tailed, like many bobcats, maybe. I have had Dogman or upright canine reports where these creatures had no tail, and that does seem to be a characteristic that does come up a lot. Peace. Not sure about other entities, but reptilians are able to appear and vanish at will. They do seem to be able to do that. Okay, folks. Well, until we meet again next Friday night, you all stay healthy, safe, and have a good evening and have a great weekend. Good night.